And like I mentioned earlier, this is a common pattern, this weird voice. Like one report that came to me about a month ago, and it's really spooky. This one centers around Andrew Kelly and his family in the town of Mississauga in Ontario, Canada. It's about an hour away from Niagara Falls. And Andrew and his father were outside their home on a clear night watching the meteor shower in the August sky. This is around 1993 or so. And Andrew was in his early 20s, and he had an 8mm camcorder plugged into an outlet inside the house. I think it was the kitchen, and just to provide that steady stream of power. So the camera's outside, and as they're looking up, they see this odd set of 4 whitish-bluish lights, oval-shaped in a diagonal formation, moving together from one end of the sky to the other end. And Andrew estimates that they were traveling northwest, but he said they were moving at a high speed and there was no sound. And his father remarked that it didn't look like a conventional aircraft, and it was moving too fast to be any conventional aircraft. And his father should know, given that he worked at the airport back then. The objects went out of sight, leaving them dumbfounded about what they saw. But it doesn't end there, because then the objects returned a second time from the opposite part of the sky towards the direction which they originated from, now traveling southeast. But this time, as they passed, the power to Andrew's camcorder abruptly cut out. But he remembers that it wasn't the whole kitchen power that went out, only the power to the camcorder. And immediately after these objects passed by, the camcorder power returned. So now this event has left the family puzzled, and they went to the house, watched the video that they had captured. Nothing else happened that day, or that evening, until the very next day. Andrew is on his way to the Deer Run shopping center about mid-afternoon. It's before rush hour. He's minding his own business. If it's a shopping mall, it's still there today if you're in that area. But to get there from his house, he had to go past the Erindale GO train station on the corner. And at that time, there was a pathway, but now it's just a parking center. But about a quarter of the way down the pathway, Andrew notices these 2 men about 30 to 50 meters away. And here we go again. They just suddenly appeared on the same path coming toward him. And Andrew described them as dressed like Jake and Elwood from the Blues Brothers. And there's a picture of them, for those of you who are too young to know who the Blues Brothers are. These men are identical in their appearance. Black suit and tie, black hat and sunglasses, the classic MIB attire. But mind you, Andrew doesn't know anything about the MIB phenomenon at all at this point in time. It wasn't until after his experience that he started doing research, and then he learned his encounter was not unlike so many others out there. And as these 2 men approached Andrew, he notices this weird smell coming off of the men, which he described as smelling like rotten eggs sprinkled with cinnamon. Yum. One of the guys says, "Sir," in a very abrupt military-style manner, just to get his attention. Now, at this point, Andrew's thinking, okay, these guys, they're probably Jehovah's Witnesses or some religious organization wanting to talk to him. So, he feels uneasy about the whole thing right off the bat. But the same man tells Andrew, "We understand that there is a videotape that you filmed of some lights you saw in the sky last night." And Andrew responds, "Yeah, I did." And then the man says, "What you saw was nothing. I advise you to get rid of the tape. If you don't get rid of the tape, there will be some serious consequences." At this point, Andrew is just wondering, how the heck did they know so much? He looked at the second guy, who just kept his gaze fixed upon the first guy. The second guy doesn't say anything. He's just occasionally glancing at Andrew every now and again. And Andrew told me that this second guy, he reminded him of how, if somebody starts a new job, they're just like kind of shadowing that person. They're not saying much. They're just following them around. That's what it reminded him of. But again, I've heard that in other reports too. So Andrew asks, "How do you know about all this?" And the first man responds, "It's none of your concern. Just get rid of it if you know it's good for you." And that's that. The men continued on their way, leaving Andrew quite confused, intimidated, and annoyed. Andrew thought about reporting this to the local police, and he didn't. Instead, he decides to follow the men from a safe distance to find out, where are these guys going? Where'd they come from? The two men continue on toward the train station. They enter a hallway, go around a corner, and big surprise, they disappear. Andrew searched the platform and the immediate vicinity, and he didn't see them anywhere. So he's like, where'd they go? So Andrew goes back home. He tells his mother about the incident. And, I asked Andrew, I said, can you describe their appearance more to me? And he goes on saying, they had an Asian appearance, but they looked very, very pale white in their complexion. Their noses were also very small. It didn't even look like human noses to him. He said they didn't have human lips either. It was more like a slit. And he describes it as like putting your coins in a coin machine. That's what the mouth looked like. But what I find extremely fascinating is how Andrew described the man's voice as being out of sync. He told me that when the man spoke, what Andrew was hearing was not lining up with the movement of the man's lips. It was slightly delayed. And another way to describe it, he said it was like a poorly overdubbed foreign film where the English voiceover doesn't line up with the foreign actor's lips. That's what it reminded him of. But there's another aspect in the voice that was quite interesting too. Just like Tammy from Texas, Andrew from Canada struggled to accurately convey the sound of the voice tone to me. But Andrew described it as almost like an underwater, rusty, metallic type of voice. He said it was like if you're underwater and, in like a swimming pool and you hear like that ladder moving under the water, that's what it sounded like that audible metallic, ee-oo sound. To be quite honest, I really struggle with trying to grasp this concept, but he stuck with it. And, I just put it in there because I still find it incredibly fascinating.